I've always been fascinated by the qipao, or Cheongsam, a historical Chinese dress you might be familiar with from popular media like In the Mood for Love. Because making clothing has been my avenue to better understanding the world around me, I'm going to try my best to make one for my beautiful mom and share with you everything I've learned about the dress, from its rise and fall in popularity to what it's helped me realize about my own identity as an Asian American.
Alright, let's make this.
To truly understand its origins, we have to travel back to the Qing dynasty when the Manchu rulers seized control of China in 1644 and established a strict dress code over the majority Han population, which was the ethnic group that had ruled during the previous Ming dynasty. Dress code was used by the Manchus as a way to establish ethnicity, identity, and power over the conquered class. The nomadic horse attire of the Manchu people was thus introduced as official court dress. However, the majority of urban population still wore Han Chinese dress, and by the end of the Qing dynasty, many of the distinctions between Han and Manchu styles of dress broke down. The collapse of the Qing dynasty in 1911 marked the end of the complex dynasty dress code. After the fall of the Qing dynasty and the rise of the Republic era, dress styles moved away from decadence to a simplification of form that better suited the economic and political climate of the time period. Additionally, under the influence of Western styles, dress began to reveal more of the human form. Philosopher Lin Yutang says that the philosophy behind Chinese and Western dress is that the latter tries to reveal the human form while the former tries to conceal it. The early 20th century was characterized by the unprecedented freedom Chinese women began to have, and the qipao developed under this newfound climate of women's rights. And so, the qipao dress was born, with its roots in Manchu and Han traditional clothing, influenced by ideals of women's rights and Western styles of dress. Speaking of dress, it's time to go fabric shopping with my mom, so let's go to the motherland. The 1920s through 1960s marked the peak of popularity for the qipao, and the garment developed from a loosely fitted ankle-length dress to a dress with increasingly higher slits and tighter silhouettes. Over time, the dress would vary in shape, color, material, and design features. The panko, however, would remain an essential element of the garment since the very beginning. Fashionable women in beautiful qipaos became popular subjects in advertising calendars given to customers at the end of lunar year. These alluring images of beauty and grace began to make their way overseas from Hong Kong. And quoting Cheryl from her book Wearing the Cheongsam, the tightness of the dress was a result of a feedback loop between fashion trends, media images, and the cultivation of a fantasy. The film The World of Susie Wong perhaps forever established the association of the qipao and Chinese woman with overt sexuality and fantasy in the West. The storyline centers around the Orient coming into contact with the West, and the Asian female was written for and by the white male. The popularity of the movie was widespread. In the West, the qipao became a costume for white women to access a fantasy-based mystique, and in the East, the qipao became even shorter and tighter to imitate the Susie Wong mini dress. A side note on all of this, for anyone not of Asian heritage wanting to make a qipao or wear one, I will get into that a little later, so keep watching. Unfortunately, the flattening of Asian culture and cultural appropriation during that time had lasting mainstream perceptions on the qipao. The tightness of the dress isn't the issue itself, because as we can see through recent fashion trends, fabric is getting sheerer and skirts are getting shorter. The associations that it had with a colonialist fantasy is what became problematic. It is also ironic how a dress that started out originally as something more liberating than the dynasty era clothing became equally restrictive for Asian women. So, how did the qipao go from an everyday dress to an outdated piece of clothing? The fall of popularity was due to a shift in the political state of China. The 1950s marked the transition to the People's Republic of China, and clothing was once again used as a political tool as the gray Mao suit became the uniform standard, and anyone wearing outlandish or traditional outfits such as qipao or Western suits were denounced for their bourgeois tendencies. This marked the official end of the qipao and its popularity as China's national dress. The late 1980s marked another important turn in China's history as the country shifted its focus from class struggle to that of economic development. One of the ways the government attempted to boost the economy of China was trying to revive the qipao as China's national dress. Unfortunately, the impact of the Cultural Revolution was long-lasting, and it proved difficult to get Chinese women to adopt the dress again. The qipao became a symbol of fashion from bygone years. However, it did become repopularized as a garment for traditional holidays and special occasions, and fashion houses and independent designers have often taken inspiration from the traditional garment to reinvent and reimagine the dress. The qipao for me embodies everything that is feminine and beautiful about Chinese culture and tradition, but I have always felt a slight hesitation when it comes to wearing one, partly due to a fear of self-orientalization and the stereotypes it might evoke, but also because my entire life I have felt like I am not Chinese enough to wear something that is so outspokenly Chinese. If this resonates with you at all, I highly recommend you read Cheryl's book. Towards the end, she conducts a series of interviews with Chinese-Canadian women about wearing the qipao, and a lot of them express similar hesitations around the dress. On the second point of not feeling Asian enough, let me explain a little. The reality of being born into an immigrant family is to always have to feel like you're balancing between two cultures. Especially when I was younger, it was this constant negotiating act of pleasing my family and their expectations based on their cultural values, and then the expectations of my peers and American culture, which felt like two completely different worlds. When you assimilate too much into the dominant culture, you risk losing this other side of your identity, and when you don't do it enough, you risk feeling a sense of otherness or losing out on opportunities. At different points in my life, I have felt either too Chinese or too white or not enough of either. Despite my insecurities, I have always felt so drawn to the dress because of its beautiful craftsmanship, the flattering silhouette, and the pride it evokes in me of my cultural heritage. In regards to the stereotypes associated with the dress, the power dynamics between the East and West is obviously so different than what it was in the 20th century or even early 2000s, and with the increased positive images of Asian and Asian American women in Western media and popular culture, I believe that new perceptions and associations of the dress are being created. It's such a shame that the qipao fell out of style as everyday wear, but I love seeing designers reinvent the qipao in new ways, with its blending of modern and traditional elements and East and West influence, different cuts and fabrics, as I believe that that is exactly what clothing should do to reflect a new set of realities. Similar to how Asian women are transcending past limiting stereotypes and creating new images and developing prominence in fields like law, journalism, and media, I hope the qipao can also transcend past limited stereotypes and hopefully one day become a style that is more freely adopted. And for anyone wanting to make or wear a qipao, I personally don't see a problem with that, so long as you aren't perpetuating any negative stereotypes and you're genuinely trying to learn more about the culture. I think clothing is such a beautiful way to learn about each other, especially if we do it in a responsible manner. Let's just take a moment to appreciate how beautiful my mom looks. I am so glad I made a qipao, and I'm going to continue to make more in the future as well as other historical clothing, so subscribe if you like the content and do nothing if you don't. Special thanks to my super supportive mom for being my fit model. As always, keep creating with intention and love, and happy Chinese New Year!